Welcome to the podcast about venture capital, where investors and founders alike can learn how VCs make decisions and reach conviction. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
Welcome back to The Full Ratchet. On today's special segment of Investor Stories, the investors address trends, sectors, and markets that they think are positioned for outsized returns in the future. This is the segment called What's Next? On today's special segment, we have Ben Casnocha of Village Global. Ben, can you talk about sectors or trends that you're bullish on?
Just in brief, and this is not original, but we're really excited about digital health and software meeting biology. We've learned a lot from our Luminary LP and Jitsia 23andMe on this topic. We've invested in several companies that are doing really interesting work in digital health. So I just think we're at the early innings of that. I think what's really exciting from a venture and entrepreneurial perspective is the missions are just incredibly inspiring, right? When you're talking about saving lives, curing cancer, that sort of thing, it takes on a whole new level of meaning than some of the more traditional software IT startups that we've backed in recent years.
On today's special segment, we have Elizabeth Yin of Hustle Fund. Elizabeth, can you talk about sectors or trends that you're bullish on?
Well, I think in this environment, my answer has changed since maybe a month ago. But in this environment, I think where I'm spending a lot of time, and granted this may change in 6 months, but where I'm spending a lot of time is, things in telemedicine. We already had invested in a number of telemedicine companies, but now regulations have changed. So, for example, one of our portfolio companies is now actually expanding to all 50 states this year when, just a month ago, they were not even legally able to. So that's an example. And I'm looking at other things where we don't yet have bets in telemedicine. Remote work, of course, like with, the surge of everybody at home. So we're looking at everything in remote work. Those are probably the two biggest areas for us. And then, I think the rest is just sort of hodgepodge, like as the ideas come through, like, do I believe that the customer base that they're selling to will buy now in this environment? And do we think that their customers are going to be able to survive and thrive with this?
On today's special segment, we have Ed Sim of Bold Start. Ed, can you talk about sectors or trends that you're bullish on?
I think that right now, as I said, look, JP Morgan has 50,000 technologists. I don't know, there's 30 million developers out there. I think developer productivity, I think investing in kind of developer infrastructure, I think we're just in the early innings of that, right? And so as everyone moves to the cloud, the other area that I'm super excited about, by the way, is the idea of resiliency engineering. Look, AWS was down last week. Right. And they talked about kind of, here's my postmortem of what happened. But guess what? TD Ameritrade's been down, Slack's been down, Microsoft's been down, Google's been down. So that's resilience engineering. How do you actually start building in resilience in the very beginning? How do you make these tests to see kind of how things will fail before they fail? How do you turn things off? How do you break things? So I think resilience engineering, we've got a couple of bets in our portfolio around that. Whether one would be kind of bringing resilience engineering left, shifting that left to developers, or looking at how to do post-mortem analysis like the way the Amazon did it much faster so they can learn from them in the future. So that's one category. The other category would be just kind of looking at productivity and collaboration. I think we're in a new era, looking at Salesforce buying Slack. I think there's a whole new era out there. And the way I think about it is that if you want, the way that Salesforce reinvented Siebel, right? It was a fundamental shift going from installed software to cloud. And I think the next fundamental shift is architecting every application for collaboration first. You need to build in collaboration natively into every application today. And the way you build it and architect it is way different from retrofitting it after the fact. And so that's what we're seeing. I mean, look at Figma right now. Figma has collaboration natively built in from the very beginning. Look at the success it had versus some of the other companies. One of our companies, Cycle, in the portfolio, which is based out of Paris, is doing that for product-centric teams. Not for product managers, but for product-centric teams. And the way you architect that is so much different from the way that you might architect a different product. And so maybe someone comes out with a next-gen Salesforce that is fully wired with crazy collaborative capabilities from day one, right? I don't know. But I think you always have to think and bet on the future. And I think there could be opportunities like that one day.
On today's special segment, we have Tim Guleri of Sierra. Tim, can you talk about sectors or trends that you're bullish on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just maybe comment on two, Nick. So one is, as you look at the journey from, we talked about Salesforce.com, which was the beginning of kind of the SaaS era, call it 99, 2000. That really propelled, the market forward. 2008, you have cloud computing that happens, and kind of AWS, Azure, GCP. And if you add the revenues of those companies today, it's about approximately $80 billion, right? Of those four, with AWS being at 40, 45, and the rest is divided up amongst Azure and GCP. And now what you're coming to is, what I call, and the industry is calling, developer computing. So these are companies that are actually focused on making the developers and the people that are writing software, make them a lot more efficient as they deploy applications and workloads on the cloud. And this trend that I love is what is loosely being called infrastructure as code. So the idea being that, everything is API first. So the first wave of companies we've seen that have exploded in the sector are companies like Twilio and Atlassian and Datadog and Okta, et cetera. And in a way, in the integration space, integration as code is exactly what Astronomer is doing, which is a company we were just talking about. So we believe that data integration as code, which will be the next wave, sort of the same wave in which massive companies were built like MuleSoft, and the wave before that was obviously, Informatica, et cetera. So that is just one sliver of infrastructure where infrastructure as code is the future, because these deployments are scale out, and you can't do it without having all the principles defined in code, because that's the only way to scale these workloads. So that's I'm very, very bullish on that. That's one trend. The second trend is what I've loosely called, or the industry is calling, the digitization of voice. And here the trend is that, and this has actually been accelerated by COVID, certainly. So you and I having a conversation now, for the first time, these conversations can be, stored in the cloud, analyzed in real time. Information can be pulled out and then used in the business context. So if you think about the first 3 decades where we got massive companies like SAP and Oracle and, PeopleSoft and Workday and, et cetera, it was all about the transactional layer, right? The conversational layer, which is these words that fly back and forth in a business conversation, for the first time, they're being codified, stored, analyzed, and used. So that'll open up, I think, a multi-trillion-dollar market in all kinds of, use cases. And we've recently made a bet in a very interesting company, actually, in not exactly in the neck of the woods, but in St. Louis, called Balto, which is applying those principles in a call center context, which is obviously where a lot of communications happen. And this little company with the 3 phenomenal young founders, scaled up to 100 odd customers very, very quickly. So, but I think that's, one of many, many companies that will be in the billions of dollars of market cap. So I'm very excited about that category as well.
I love that comment about the conversation layer and digitizing it and the data around it. I think back to one of my growth hacks for this show 6 years ago is that I would have every episode transcribed, and then I would put it on the blog post on the website, and then Google would index it, right? And my traffic on the long tail on Google for SEO was 90% of the total traffic we would get. And so for years, now, of course, this audio file can be transcribed automatically. I mean, it's very close. It's very close to a human transcriber. And so there's no longer an edge in that, but
And Nick, the other thing that's interesting is if you think about, I was thinking about this the other day. You think about YouTube, right? So you go to YouTube now. You can cook any recipe. You can fix your car. All this information gets codified and reused. Imagine that happening across all business conversations, right? Sales, customer support, procurement, training, right? Billions of conversations. Intelligent people talking to intelligent people saying intelligent things. For the history of the world, it goes into the ether, never to be used again. And now, going forward, it gets captured, it gets cataloged, it gets reused. So I think the value unlock from that is going to be enormous, and it's going to be verticalized. And I think I'm super bullish on that. And so we love the innovation that's going on. We've tracked 168 companies in the space. We made our first bet. And I'm very bullish on where this thing will go over the next couple of decades.
Yeah, we've talked a lot on the show about IoT sensors and typically cameras, but to your point, microphones, just another sensor capturing
Absolutely.
Vast amounts of data just in the form
Absolutely
of audio.
Right.
That will conclude this installment of Investor Stories. If you're enjoying the program and would like to see it continue, take a moment and leave a 5-star review in iTunes. Also, if you'd like updates on new content from TFR, as well as the top 10 VC articles every week, go to fullratchet.net and sign up for the newsletter. Okay, that will wrap things up for today. Until next time, over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks for joining me.